Hello there and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast, and welcome to an episode celebrating the Scottish Cup 5th round weekend. There were 6 fixtures taking place on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, with 2 postponed owing to the bad weather, and we will be examining, analysing and interrogating the very best of the action. My name is Craig Telfer, and right this very second I am joined by a man who I share precious little with other than the same first name and a love of football. It's Craig Anderson.
Hello, Craig. I'm not sure how true that is, but we'll go with it. Maybe the sense of style is all in one direction, but nonetheless.
How is everything, Craig? I'm trying to think the last time you and I would have done a podcast together, where it might have been a Scotland episode a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I feel like that's when our paths cross, when there's, like today, both lower league and top flight opposition in action, or when we get to chat with the national team, and yeah. So it does feel like a while. I've seen you a couple of times since then, but certainly not on a podcasting basis.
Yeah, so this, for the listener who isn't quite familiar with myself and Craig's style, imagine a WWE tag team that have been thrown together because the individuals don't have anything going for them in the programming, so they just like, listen, stick the pair of them together and let's see what happens. But nevertheless, I think it wasn't a fantastic weekend of cup football. Obviously 2 games postponed. I think we're all quite looking forward to seeing the Aberdeen-Motherwell game, and there was no upsets. I think that we saw the best you would say is 5 of the 6 teams who were expected to win perhaps huffed and puffed their way through it, and then there was an absolute big dogging with Rangers beating Queen's Park 8-0. You think that's a fair thing to say?
Yeah. I think if you're going for vintage weekends, I think round 4 had more of that in terms of the shocks and the spills. And if you were picking the winners in every game, kind of on the odds, I think you would have had 6 out of 6 this weekend.
Yeah, so what we'll do, Craig, is we'll just go Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and we'll start with the game that kicked off the weekend. This was Airdrieonians 1, St Mirren 2 after extra time. St Mirren made pretty hard work of the Diamonds on Friday night. They required a late goal in extra time to earn the victory. Jacob Devaney got his first goal for the club with a well-taken effort midway through the first half, only for Ewan Henderson to tie the contest with a very nice goal of his own just after the hour mark. The tie inexorably looked as though it was heading towards penalties until Roland Adu nabbed the winner with actually a very well-taken goal in the 115th minute. Craig, where to start with this one? Do you want to start with some terrible St Mirren players? Do you want to start with some good goals? Do you want to start with a half-decent performance from Airdrieonians?
All of the above. I like talking about Airdrie in the sense that I obviously don't get to see. I get to see a wee bit of them in the Championship, but they're actually probably one of the less featured teams on TV games.
Maybe
but I have seen them a couple of times, either from doing these podcasts or from things like that when they've been playing against top flight opposition, and I feel like they quite often save their best for these games. They've had a couple of scalps from top flight teams in cups recently. And in fact, the game I remember talking about at length was maybe 2 seasons ago when they beat St Mirren in the League Cup group stages.
Yes, remember that.
I feel like they've done that quite a lot, and it was yet again, even though they're struggling if you look at the table in the Championship, obviously since Taylor Sinclair kind of has taken over, they've been getting better and might fancy themselves not to go down this year, but it's still looking at the table, they're a bottom 3 Championship team. But you wouldn't necessarily have thought that, I don't think, from watching the game. I think you could probably just about see that St Mirren were maybe the Premiership team, but I think you would easily have been mistaken for it being Airdrie of 2 years ago, where they were kind of fighting to get promoted. And they just, they knocked the ball about really nicely. There were some good individual performances. Obviously, added in of late the threat of Lewis Strapp, who's just kind of box office at times. They didn't maybe get as much out of that as you can in some other days. But again, that's because St Mirren are probably pretty well set at dealing with set pieces. That's kind of... But so I enjoyed watching them. I think of the games, like we will talk about 2 lower league teams playing against Premiership opposition. Well, there was more than that, obviously, but the 2 that were on the BBC games, and we'll talk about your team kind of last.
Yeah.
I think Airdrie posed more of a threat to St Mirren than Steny did to Falkirk, but also the gaps.
Very fair to say, yeah.
The gap's obviously not as big. And definitely on another day, if they'd had a wee bit of luck go their way, it felt like they could have won that tie. It felt like they were going to take it to pens. But at the end of the day, they probably just got undone a wee bit. It was a pretty annoying goal to lose, I'd imagine, because it's kind of big ball down the middle. But as you said, it was a really well taken goal. And Edo was one of those players that kind of always flatters to deceive a bit with St Mirren. Like he's got quality, and I think you kind of saw that wee bit of quality. And it was, I think, just those moments of slight quality that maybe just showed for St Mirren. But their fans haven't been happy of late. They've not really done much since the cup win, and they obviously they beat Hearts last week, which was a big result for them. A lot of draws, a lot of defeats, but they're in another cup quarter final. They have a tie that they'll definitely fancy they could win. They probably are favourites to win again. On course for a cup double, perhaps.
To do a St Johnson, I think that's in the vernacular. We'll start with Airdrie. I agree with a lot of the stuff you say. I think they're a fun side to watch. I think that because there is a bit of a lack of physicality throughout the team, it's not very often teams will have somebody like Chris Mockery being your target man or your false nine. And I think with Mockery's stature, Mockery's technically a very, very good player. I think we saw that when he was breaking through at Dundee United, and there were really high hopes for him that he would go on and establish himself within the squad, and I think injuries precluded that from happening. It doesn't take away from the fact that I think he's a very technically gifted player and works that role quite cleverly. I quite like seeing players excel in positions that they shouldn't normally do. For instance, on the lower league show, I quite like talking about Willie Gibson playing at right back for Annan Athletic, and I think that you can apply the same sort of principles to Chris Mockery playing up front for Airdrieonians. And I think that throughout that Airdrieonians team, there are a number of players who are just good football players. You know, I think like Dean McMaster, Charlie Telfer, Ewan Henderson playing and just off Mockery. Those are guys you'd probably say neat and tidy. Maybe don't necessarily have the guts for a fight to go man for man, to go physical. But on this occasion, I think they really did have a go at St Mirren. They really did. And I think compared to, as you say, the Stennisweer, who were, I think, to say that Stennisweer didn't really offer anything in an attacking sense, I think that's perhaps doing a bit of an understatement to that in terms of their lack of offence. But in this game, I thought St Mirren had a good go at this. Airdrie had a good go at this, and I was impressed when I thought Henderson took his goal very well. I thought perhaps in another day, Barjonas could have had a penalty when Richard King fouled him. I'll be interested to get your thoughts on that. But on the whole, it's the sort of performance that augurs well for the remainder of the season. I think since Aaron Taylor-Sinclair came into the place, Danny Lennon, I think they've certainly been on a bit of an upward curve. It's not a huge gradient, but nevertheless, it's an upward curve all the same. And I do think they've got enough about themselves to move away from the relegation place. And it's easy to say that if you can repeat that kind of performance in the bread and butter games, you should have enough about you to move away from safety. But it's a Scottish Cup tie, you're playing against a big team, it's live on the television, very different set of circumstances to taking on, say, for instance, Greenock Morton, for instance.
But I think if you do look at their form, like basically since Taylor-Sinclair came in, they aren't, it's not relegation form, in general,
better,
across the league as well. So it's, I think in terms of the penalty decision, watching it live, my initial thought was, I don't think that should be a penalty, but I was fully expecting it to be given. Just the first time you saw it, because to me, Barjonas is 100% looking for it. He kind of slows himself up. He kind of gets himself in, and he moves himself into the way of the challenge. But having said that, when you watch it back, that, while I think all of that is true, and while I think these things shouldn't be penalties, 99% of the time when that happens, it does get given. So I think they can count themselves fairly unlucky they didn't get it. I was pleased that that they obviously scored after that, so it kind of became less of a talking point of they've been denied. They got their way back into it, and I think fortunately that didn't become kind of an integral decision in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they, as we said, they put up a battle. I also think they were aided by St Mirren just are in a bit of a funk at the moment, as much as they obviously got that win against Hearts, but even then they were playing against 10 men for a long time, and it was a bit of a huff and a puff to get there. I'm conscious of saying this when they come to Rugby Park in 2 days' time, and I'm talking about that. it felt like every change St Mirren made them weaker as well. They brought on, I think we need to just talk about Keon Etete. That was a very, very, very bad cameo. He generally was poor, but also he's the one that kind of gives away
that's right.
Gives away the ball for the equaliser, and as you said, really nice, nice finish by Henderson, but nice kind of moving the build up as well, kind of to get the ball into him. It wasn't a massive surprise to then see him basically not re-emerge after full time, but it was. I did the transfer show where we were talking about the signing and everything on paper about the guy, and everything I'd read about the guy suggested he was going to be pretty poor. I feel like we saw that. It will be interesting to see how Robinson manages this from now on. Does he just chuck him straight back in, or does he give him a wee bit of time away and trying to kind of pull him back towards what he no doubt expects or wants from a player? Obviously then they bring the sub on and he has to go off, so it was kind of a array of
that can happen.
Sub.
Yeah, that surely can happen. Do you have access to that sort of information? Will you know the last time a sub happened in a game of football?
So I don't. In theory I could, but I would have to write some code to work it out, and I've not got around to doing it. But I did actually read someone posted one on Pie and Bovril that it happened not that long ago. It was, I'm just bringing it up, I was in a Liverpool game this season against Spurs.
There you go.
Connor Bradley got subbed at half time for Alexander Isak, who then went off for Jeremy Frimpong, who then went off for Federico Chiesa, all inside 90 minutes as well.
But there you go. I thought these things were rarities, but there you go. You get two in the same season. I think it was important to point out as well that, like, as bad as Etete was, the player that he came on for, Jake Young, hooked after 35 minutes. I mean, this is his third appearance for St Mirren, sent off. I think it was against Dundee, hooked early doors here. You could see Robinson like very unhappy with his performance. I think when the camera would cut to him on the broadcast, you see him gesticulating quite wildly at Young. So I think from the four players they've brought into the club, there's two, Young and Etete. I'm not sure if these guys are going to give us what we need from them.
But to talk about one of the other ones that they did bring in, who I've been really impressed with what I've seen of so far, Jacob Devaney scores a really nice goal.
It's a great goal. No backlift on it as well. I thought that was what's so good about it. It reminded me very slightly. I just want to say very slightly. Ronaldinho against Barcelona, Ronaldinho against Chelsea, where he's able to put so much power into it and have a really, really nice finish, despite the fact there's no backlift into it. It reminded me, I'd say, slight parallels with that.
Yeah, but to kind of, you're bringing in a young guy that's played basically no football to this point. He's still, I think, 18. Obviously, fairly highly rated at Man United. I think he's been in match day squads and stuff, but that isn't necessarily saying much for Man United at the moment. Like, every man and their dog's getting a chance. So it wasn't a guarantee, but I think we've seen enough from him to say, yeah, he's probably a player, and that'll be a nice bit of business, because they've needed someone just a wee bit more creative ability in there. But they're in the hat. I think you can obviously grumble about the performance, but they won a League Cup where they won 2 penalty shoutouts to get to the semis, and I don't think anyone's remembering that kind of when they're lifting the trophy, and it could well be the same kind of for this.
Now, while St Mirren made heavy work of getting the better of Airdrieonian, you do not have to work hard to get the better of the internet if you access NordVPN, the perfect virtual private network that allows you to browse the internet with the freedom and the space and the way you want it to be. Craig, I've been using NordVPN for a couple of months now. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's quick, it's safe, it's secure. It's an absolute dream to work with.
Yeah, so I lived obviously we're going back a decade ago. It wasn't specifically NordVPN, because I don't know if it even existed at that time, but when I lived in Australia for a couple of years, even if I wanted to watch football highlights, if I wanted to watch anything that was going on, even if you wanted to listen to like the radio while I was over there, I kind of had to use a VPN to try and access that. Even if you want to watch sort of, I was going to name a show there. I don't think we're meant to do that. If you want to watch popular cookery-based programmes that are shown on the BBC or Channel 4, you can even do that over there. So having the ability to basically convince your computer, that you are based in another country, that you are in fact back home in Great Britain, while it's 35 degrees and sunny outside, you can pretend you're in the 2 degrees rain of Glasgow. That was very helpful for me. If I was still living there, it would be no doubt would be NordVPN I would be using. I do use it when I go on holiday now for the same purposes. Sitting in a hotel room at 3 a.m. watching your team get beat is always great fun when you're on holiday. And yeah, so I'm a big fan of NordVPN.
I say it a lot of the time, but sometimes doing these read-throughs can be mildly embarrassing, especially if it's for a product you've actually no interest in, or you've got to feign some sort of knowledge of. That's really not the case with NordVPN. It really is a fantastic product. And if you're interested in signing up for it, you can do so with a free 30-day money-back guarantee by going to nordvpn.com/terracepod. That is nordvpn.com/terracepod for a free 30-day money-back guarantee. So yes, if you want to browse the internet safely, you want to browse it securely, you want to access anything your heart desires from anywhere in the world, use NordVPN. Can't recommend it highly enough. You've got Kilmarnock on Wednesday, as you've touched on. This is a massive game at the towards the bottom of the table, and it feels like it's the relegation playoff place 6-pointer. How are you feeling going into this one?
More confident than I was kind of just over a week ago. The fact that we got that result against Aberdeen and the performance was a bit better. It's helpful. The fact that Dominic Thompson is suspended is good news. So there's kind of positives going into the game there. It is huge. It was a bit of a blow that St Mirren did get that win against Hearts last week, because it made the gap 6 points again. So it feels a wee bit do or die. It seems a bit early to say that, but if we lose this game, we're 9 points behind them. I don't think that's going to hold back in. I'm kind of more confident now. I still think Kelly probably finish 11th, but a win in this game and all of a sudden it is kind of all we play for, and I think we've got a chance. I think the business we did in the last few days has been decent enough, so hopefully can give them a go. And as I think it's just, if we can go down swinging kind of thing, it'll mean if we do go in the playoffs, like you're going in on a high rather than kind of stumbling. And although the last time we went into the playoffs, I think we finished like win, draw, win, and still got pumped off Dundee, so it's not a guarantee.
Best of luck on Wednesday night. We'll move on to the games on Saturday afternoon, and we'll start with a Fife derby. Dunfermline Athletic 2, Kelty Hearts 0. Bit of a mismatched contest this. Dunfermline Athletic, who are the promotion hopefuls, going against bottom of League One Kelty Hearts. Took them a bit of time to get it going, but ultimately the Pars prevailed, courtesy of 2 goals from Kiss Kane, one a back post header and the one quite a well taken finish from an Andy Todd cross. Craig, I think this is perhaps emblematic of a lot of the games where the big team took on the smaller team. It took them a wee bit of time to get going, but ultimately they came through.
Yeah, and I think it was probably the one that I thought had the least jeopardy, apart from maybe Rangers v Queen's Park and Celtic v Dundee, to be fair, although that didn't prove to be the case. It had the least jeopardy in it. It kind of felt like Dunfermline were just going to be too strong. I think Kelly had from what I gather, like we're pretty decent in the first half, and maybe Dunfermline were a wee bit disappointing, but Chris Kane comes on at half time and gets the goals and made a bit of a difference, I think. And he obviously, I had a first, I was going to say it could have been a third, but it would have been a first. There was the one that kind of bounced down on the line. Before that, I think I've not seen anything to guarantee it was in, so fair enough on that. But yeah, he's a player that I think if they could, Scottish Cup winner with St Johnstone, talking about that team already, he's a player that if they could keep fit and consistently fit would obviously be a massive asset, and will be a massive asset. He was obviously hugely important to them last season.
Yeah.
So that could be a big, I know he's been back in the team a wee bit. I think he's not scored in the league, but I think he's got a few goals in the cup, if I'm right. And he's not scored in the league for a while anyway, since he came back. But I think that could be quite important for them kind of in the run-in. And again, everyone will be looking at this draw with obviously get on to it, but Rangers and Celtic drawing each other.
Mm-hmm.
every one of the other teams left in it will be thinking we can get to the final here with a good
100%.
pushing, and that includes your championship teams, and they've already done over Hibs and probably deserve to win that game, or at least were good value for it. So they looked decent enough. It wasn't vintage Dunfermline, and I think there's been some pretty poor performances. I saw Andy Todd getting a wee bit of stick for how he's been playing of late, but he's a young boy. He's kind of going to have peaks and troughs in his performances, but hopefully from his point of view he gets that back on track. But yeah, not much more to say. I think Kelty seem like they've been improving a wee bit in the league, but
I don't know. Kelty, I mean, as I was looking, I didn't realise they were as cut adrift as well. There's a 5-point difference between themselves and Cove Rangers at the bottom of the table. I've said it a number of times, but I think this is the least stardusty version of Kelty Heart since they came into the SPFL. I think that since winning the League 2 title in 2022, I think it was when they won the League 2 title, I think there's just been downsizing ever so slightly, and this has come to the stage here where it's a team, bit of quality here and there, a decent spine, but it's a lot of young boys taking their first steps in the game, and ultimately that's going to cost you. What I would say, I'd agree with Neil Lennon in his post-match interview on Sports Scene, where he basically said, I don't really care about the performance, it's all about getting through to the next round. And going on that overall theme about the bigger teams perhaps taking a little bit to get going in this, I think that ultimately that's the most important thing, is getting through. We'll come on at the very end of this podcast to talk about the draw, but I'm going to back up your point that I think every team should fancy their chances of winning the tournament. With Rangers and Celtic drawing each other especially, you take out one of the big boys and they're not pretty convincing, either of the big boys at the moment, so I think every team would really want to give it a go. As for this, there was one, I can't really add anything else to what you've said. I think that's all very fair. Just sticking with penalties that weren't given, do you think that Todd should have been given a penalty after Jack Wiley appeared to kick him in the back of the leg?
Probably, aye. I could see it. I thought when I watched the live, which obviously unlike some of the other games, there's no VR for this or anything like that. The first time I watched it live, I was like, he's probably got the toe to the ball. And I think he maybe does get a toe to the ball, but he does it by kind of kicking through Todd, so I think it probably is a penalty. So yeah, I was going to say they were unlucky, but it didn't matter.
Yeah, I think that Kelty obviously have bigger fish to fry at the moment. I think it's really important that they can try and extricate themselves from this position, but it just doesn't seem likely. And
Cove keep picking up points now, so it's
Cove are a difficult team to get a handle on. I can't tell if Cove Rangers are good or not. But having seen Kelty a couple of days, actually one of the best opposition performances I saw for the Warriors was against Cove Rangers. But they've got a big game, Peterhead at home on Valentine's Day. Peterhead are a team that don't travel particularly well, so you'd maybe fancy Kelty to get something from that. But I just look at the balance of the teams. Peterhead are just a better team, more quality, and especially in those attacking areas.
They're probably just looking for Hamilton to keep getting extra points deductions, and then that's a route to safety.
Yeah, hopefully that something horrendous happens, then they get a 20-point deduction and ultimately they're saved. Now we can move on from this match and we'll head to the most northerly ground in the SPFL to examine Elgin City 2, Partick Thistle 3. Robbie Crawford opened the scoring for Thistle after 17 minutes. Ryan Sargent equalised for the home side, but a Tony Watt penalty just before the interval restored the Jags' lead. Sargent got his second equaliser of the game, but Ben Stanway's deflected goal 10 minutes from time saw the championship side progress to the quarter-finals. On this game, I think that perhaps the most unlucky person in the whole of Borough Briggs was Mikko Virtanen, who gave away the penalty and then stuck out his leg and deflected Stanway's shot into the net. So he had a massive bearing on the outcome of this game.
Yeah, and I think it was one of those rare penalties where absolutely nobody is complaining. It was so he's just got his head in his hands on the ground, and that's pretty frustrating for them because they obviously go behind. And when I saw that goal went in, I thought, all right, there goes kind of this, but they got themselves back into it with the equaliser, and then it's just before half time, and they're probably thinking, let's get ourselves, win level and sort it out. But they obviously pull themselves back for a second time, and you think, oh, here we go. And yeah, I think it's a wee bit of quality in the build-up though from Stanway. I think he's having a really good run of it at the moment. I have to say, I was at Partick Thistle's game in the previous round when they beat Montrose, was going to say fairly comfortably. It was comfortably for most of the game, and then they got Logan Chalmers got sent off. It went 2-1, and they briefly were panicking a bit, but they did win. And I've been quite impressed with what I've seen from Thistle quite a lot. I wasn't expecting much from them with the Mark Wilson appointment and whatever, but and I think Stanway's been at the heart of a lot of that. He seems like he probably has a future beyond the championship, I would suggest. He's still only 21.
Strongly linked with, I think Scott Burns denied there was him moving to Dundee or him signing a pre-contract with Dundee, but he's certainly been linked with other clubs. Heart of Midlothian, I think, were one of the other teams that were linked with them. So it's great. I think it's ultimately great to see. I like seeing that young guys who are maybe playing at a lower level and get the chance to move upward. So hopefully that's the case with him. On Elgin, they're in a pretty bad run of form at the moment, pretty much since he won the League 2 Manager of the Month for November. You know the expression that the curse of the Manager of the Month only just lasts a couple of the games. This has lasted a fair wee bit for Alan Hale brackets left. However, if you do look at the recent results, you know, they came back from 2-0 down to draw 2 each with Dumbarton. They held the Spartans to a 3-each draw, gave Partick Thistle a good game. Now, while they're not necessarily picking up a massive accumulation of points, and they are still look as though they could get suckered into the nonsense at the bottom of the table between Dumbarton and Edinburgh City, which, by the way, we'll talk about on the lower league show later on in the week, so do tune in for that. I think that certainly the performances and the resilience they're showing, that's trending in the right direction.
Yeah, and also it's like you're talking about it and you look at the table, it does look like they're looking down the way, but they win their games in hand and they're like a point off the playoffs. So it feels like every now and then when I look at the table for League 2, it's like, how have they ended up there? So like at Forfar, it was they feel like they hadn't won for ages, and then I'm looking at it and they're actually not really that far off the playoff spots, and so it's it feels like that middle of the table is quite congested. I suppose the points deductions have kind of contributed to that a wee bit of like Dumbarton and Edinburgh, because that would be kind of tightened up even more if they weren't there. But I feel like this happens with Elgin quite a lot, where you think, all right, they're going to be good, and then you think, all right, they're going to be bad. It's like a kind of lesser version of the Greenock Morton thing that you always talk about. Like it does feel like they have these massive dips and troughs in their season.
What I would say, though, I thought Ryan Sargent sees the first goal was quite opportunistic. It's almost like a flopping header. The ball kind of very favourably scoops up for him to sort of nudge into and get in it. But I thought the second one was brilliantly well worked. It's a great ball over from the right from McKeever, and the header back across Josh Clark. Very difficult for any goalkeeper to try and react to that. So he took that very well. And there was a chance right at the end. Kyle Girvin had a header.
Yeah.
Josh Clark, though, did very well to beat the ball away by diving to his left.
Yeah, they know. They like that thing. That's all you can ask for when you're Elgin and you play against a kind of team 2 divisions above you. It's like you're well in the game throughout it, and you definitely. I don't think they'll kind of leave with that many regrets. Like they've given it their all. It's not like they've chucked it away in any sense. They just got undone with a wee bit of bad luck and a good bit of play.
Got to say as well, Borough Briggs, when Elgin are doing well or when there's a big occasion, Borough Briggs can look absolutely fantastic place to watch football. Particularly, I mean, I know we're still in the middle of winter at the moment, but when it's sunny and you can get people like lying on the grass embankments behind the goals, that's a great place to watch football. And it was great seeing the sort of the covered terracing full of Thistle fans there as well. So that was a really good spectacle. Now we'll go to the east end of Glasgow to talk about the game on Saturday night between Celtic and Dundee. Ethan Hamilton put the visitors ahead early on in the second half with a goal of the season contender, a real jaw-dropping strike. But Celtic somehow forced extra time when Junior Adamu, making his debut no less, equalised in the 7th minute of injury time. And then Sebastian Tunetke got the winner 2 minutes into added time. Beg your pardon, added time? Extra time. What to make of this, Craig? Who do you want to start with this one? Celtic or... I mean, we'll start talking about Dundee, because I thought that Dundee were really, really, really good here for the best part, particularly in that second half when Celtic had them under the cosh. I thought particularly the forward players, the way they were able to really skillfully carry the ball up the park. It wasn't just being booted up the park and then coming straight back. think they were really good at buying time and being able to relieve the pressure on the team. And some of the runs didn't necessarily go anywhere, but just in allowing the team to have a breather, reorganise, those players were very good for it. And it was the goal of the weekend when Adamu scored as one of those, oh, for fuck's sake. Just really disappointed with that, because I don't really think Celtic deserved anything from this game, if I'm being honest. Look, Dundee were really hard done by here.
Yeah, I think it's been like Martin O'Neill's Celtic since he came in, they've ridden the luck quite a few times, and that was kind of another case of it. And they've been good sometimes as well, but that was just an example where, I think on the balance of play, probably if you look at it kind of objectively without having probably most of the country rooting for Dundee, you'd probably say, well, yes, Dundee played well, but Celtic are probably still were the better team in the game in terms of what they created and how they played. But the resilience from Dundee, they've obviously already beaten Celtic this season, and you can kind of see that they had that belief, and it really looked like the way that Presley's had them playing, which at the start was not necessarily for the purists. It was kind of very stodgy, and it felt like it feels like they've grown as a team a wee bit. The business that they've done over the windows has been really good. They brought in Hamilton, I think at the end of, I think it was in August, like right at the end of the first transfer window. He's been quite transformative. He's a really good player, I think. They've started to get a lot out of like Congreve. Yogani's kind of come into a game a bit. Yeah. They brought in Halliday in January. He looks like he could be a good signing, although he faded really badly, and probably that cost them. It might have been a case that had they been able to get him off the park, it might have helped the end. But I think they'd made maybe they hadn't. No, maybe they could have taken him off, and maybe they should have towards the end, because that kind of cost them eventually. But yeah, they seem to be well set up for these kind of games against the bigger teams. They've given Hearts a couple of tough games as well, and Rangers likewise, and so they seem to have something about them at the moment, Dundee, that kind of the mindset is right now, where I don't think it was at the start of the season. But yeah, you actually worry a wee bit if it could go either way in terms of the effect it has on them, because it could be kind of galvanising, and they say, right, let's make sure we don't let anything happen again, or it could be a wee bit deflating. I think you saw in the extra time period it was deflating.
Totally.
You kind of imagine Presley's like, right, we've got to go and win this again. Let's go back out and not make sure we keep ourselves in it. And then they concede a goal like pretty much straight away. And they had wee half openings. I mean, probably the best chance they had was right at the end, but like 3 minutes into extra time, stoppage time, but they never really looked like they had the belief to win the game after that. Maybe it's different if Yogani's chance, obviously, it's a half chance. It would have made it 2-0. I think that would have been game over. But
I think when Adamu's goal goes in, I think that Dundee just didn't have anything left to offer. I think just physically, emotionally, mentally, I think that they had put a lot into that. And especially as well where one of perhaps the controversies from this game was the amount of added on time. I think there was 5 minutes added on. It was the 7th minute when Adamu scored. I just think that all those factors leading up to just think it's like, and I think that when that goal goes in, I had no real confidence that Dundee would come back into it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think on the time it's worth kind of saying, like, because I think originally it was about the 89th minute. They said, there's going to be 4 minutes added on, and then Kieran Tierney goes down injured. I think it's pretty much bang on 89. And so that last minute is completely lost. So then they say, it's going to be 5. But then Tierney ended up being down for another minute. So I think actually playing on to 96 was fair. I don't think they could really count that. I mean, obviously, like, yes, it's 97 on the clock, but it was like 96:02 or something when it went in, and they're obviously, the referee's not blowing the full-time whistle when a cross is whizzing across the box. So I imagine the response if he had. But so yeah, it's really annoying because it is literally one more big clearance. Literally, probably that ball leaves the box again and the referee blows the whistle. But I don't think they could have complaints about that. I think it's just really frustrating and disappointing. And Celtic is so disjointed again in attack. It's like everything they do is they're having to produce almost magic to
Yes,
score every goal.
There's nothing, that's something that I notice as well. It feels like there's no real structure to the attacks. It's just waiting, because it's waiting for good players to do something. I think that's ultimately Celtic have better players than most of the teams across Scotland, and that's why they're able to win. So when the phases of play or the tactics or whatever just don't work, the fact that you have better players that can conjure moments out of nothing, like Tavernier with that, be able to come in the ball into the box, Adamu with a really, really nice finish to put it into the net. They've got players that other teams that can do that other teams just don't.
Yeah, and you also saw the flip side to that though, which is like we questioned the deadline day business in terms of it being a lot of gambles. We spoke about Mvuka and the fact that his record didn't look that good. They tried to sign him permanently, couldn't sign him permanently because of some medical issue. They signed him on loan anyway, and he was off at half time. He did not look up to it at all. Bernardo, and obviously not a new signing, but not seen a lot of him recently, and I think you can see why, even though I've generally liked him as a player. But you get the flip side of it, which is Adamu, who question marks about him as a player and what he'll bring. He's had good goal scoring records in leagues like similar to ours in the past, but that was a while ago. But he gets that wee bit of magic at the end. It's still as much as you can talk about, a bit of poor defending, it's a really nice finish.
You're not expecting him to do that, to basically allow the ball to come through him, basically come through his legs, and then just sort of like flick out a leg and divert it into the net. It's a very clever goal.
Although I think the thing that would have summed up Celtic season is if it had come off Araujo just on the line. I had to jump out of the way of it, and he was offside. I was like, that would have kind of summed up how the season's been going for them of late. But no, and probably if Wilfried Nancy was still the manager, it would have done. Because it kind of feels like they had all the bad luck then and all the good luck now.
What did you make of Tunecki's winner there? Do you think John McCracken could have maybe done a little bit better? The ball seemed to go through him.
It goes through him. I also think it's hit really nicely, and really it kind of hits it early and catches him unawares. So I think McCracken will be disappointed, but I don't think it's like a howler or anything like that. I think it's just it's well hit.
And speaking of well hit, we'll save the best from this game till last. Talk to me about Ethan Hamilton's goal. I thought that was incredible. And the number of times when you get to see the slow motion replays from behind him, the way the ball swerves past Sinisalo, and the fact that it's the inside of the net rather than the back of the net, I think that adds to how aesthetically wonderful this strike was.
I think it's the fact, like the strike in itself is really nice, as you said, but the fact that he wins the ball kind of further back and kind of shuffles past a couple of players to get himself into that position. Yeah, it's a really nice goal, and it's a shame because that could have been a kind of iconic winner. I think Dundee obviously now 116 years without a Scottish Cup win. They don't tend to do very well in the competition. They don't win at Celtic Park very often. I think it was like 20 odd years ago or something. So they've had a lot of demons that they could have kind of put aside there, and it felt like that goal to do it would have been kind of quite an iconic goal. And it's sadly now probably one of many goals away teams have scored at Celtic Park that will be somewhat forgotten. I'm thinking about Suleiman Koulibaly scoring one for Killie.
I knew you were going to say that. That was a brilliant goal though. Brilliant goal.
Put us 1-0 up, but I think we got beat 5-1 that day, so it's kind of like, right, okay, well done, but what's it worth? And I think I remember sticking on Killie, Eric Scora, French player, scored a chip at that's probably like 2004 or something.
Right,
Craig.
okay.
Scored a chip. It was like such a wonderful goal at Celtic Park. I think we were already 6-0 down. And Danny Ratchie, another player you probably don't remember, who also scored a really nice goal at Celtic. Lots of great goals will be scored at Celtic Park that nobody pays any attention to, because it's like, aye, great, but you got beat 4-1, 5-1, 6-1. And then this is another one where a Dundee fan will watch that fondly, but all it's going to do is bring back the memories of it's like the Lee Griffiths free kicks, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking of there, the Lee Griffiths free kicks against England, where incredible goals were nothing to show for it. A couple of times I've seen Dundee. I know it's a player that probably a lot of people mentioning, but the couple of times I've seen, like Cameron Congreve's a player that really sticks out for me. He looks like a really exciting player down the right hand side. Pace, bit of trickery, quite unpredictable as well. I really like what I've seen from him.
Yeah, I think he as with a lot of the signings that they kind of made, it probably took him a wee while to get going. But of late, he's definitely added, he's added a bit. He's quite direct. He can take people on, but he's not like super predictable. I think sometimes you get kind of these mostly direct wingers that you kind of know what they're going to do, but he does mix it up quite nicely, and probably will be a wee bit, he want to add goals to his game. I think that's maybe the one thing that's been a wee bit missing since he went there. But yeah, I actually think Dundee have recruited generally quite well this season, and that's been probably what, because I think a lot of us looked at the Presley appointment, looked at the type of players they were bringing in, and thought, oh, they're in real bother, and they may still end up that way. I think they are only still 6 points ahead of Kelly as well, so it's not impossible to get dragged back into it. But at the same time, of late, you've started seeing them turn things around, and it feels more likely to me that they're going to kind of plod along, finish 8th, 9th, maybe even finish above United and be happy enough.
Yeah, they've got Falkirk away on Wednesday and then Livingston at home on Saturday. So certainly Falkirk will give them a tough game, but you'd fancy them to get the better of, you fancy most teams to get the better of Livingston at the moment. But we'll go on to the games on Sunday, and we'll start by looking at just a pumping. This was just a pumping for the first minute to last. This is Rangers' 8-0 win over Queen's Park at Ibrox. James Tavernier scored a hat-trick. New signings Ryan Naderi got a brace. Bojan Miovski and Tochi Chukwuani netted one each, and Matty Shields scored an own goal. I have absolutely no idea how you analyse something like this. It felt as though Queen's Park, any time there was a ball from out wide put into the penalty box, that was the equivalent of like a penalty kick. They were atrocious at defending them, and Rangers very adept and very aggressive at attacking them, and it paid dividends. And it feels like the scoreline, even a big score like this, it felt like it was actually reflective of how the game went.
Yeah, I have to say, I was out yesterday, so this is the one game I didn't see. Well, I mean, there was other games, the ones that weren't on the TV that I didn't see as well, but this is the one game I didn't see, and I saw the 8-0, I saw it was 5-0 at half time, and I saw it coming through. And then when I watched the highlights, I was like, it wasn't quite what I was expecting, because as you said, it was just a barrage of like corners and set pieces rather than Rangers necessarily. It's not to say they obviously didn't open them up in open play, because you don't, usually that's how you get a corner in the first place. But it'll be quite, I mean, Rangers are big, they're a big team now under Rowe. I think it's probably not surprising that you bring up a guy who's been working in the kind of English lower leagues, and often what you get is really physical players, and feels like they've been signing to a profile. They have been strong in the league from set pieces of late and from cross balls, and it was more of the same. And while you can say, it'll be disappointing for that you lose goals like that, I think Rangers have the ability to just go and sign bigger, stronger players than Queen's Park have got. And the quality of the dead balls, obviously Tavernier, we know, has an excellent delivery from a set piece. The crosses from wide and open play that led to a couple of things were good, but they will still be disappointed. Like that, thinking that first goal in particular, like Naderi, or as they will want to call him in that part of Glasgow now, Londonderry, scored a really nice goal. Yeah, I was like watching that, I better shoehorn that in. I'm sure someone else has done it, but like, he's standing, he's big. He's like, that's the one thing that you know about this guy. He's a big guy, and he's standing completely unmarked, so 6 yards of space to header one in, and it kind of carried on that way. I think Tavernier, nobody's going to be able to take it off him, but I think the award of the hat-trick is perhaps quite generous.
I think that was an own goal. I think that was Callum Ferry's own goal there.
Yeah, I gave him a hat-trick I wrote the SPFL weekend in numbers, but I hadn't seen the highlights at that point, so I just saw it reported as a hat-trick I was like, right, okay, James Tavernier hat-trick, and then I was watching it back, I'm like, ooh, would I give him that goal? But I don't think anyone's going to be taken away. And it's very interesting that obviously he's a defender, and defenders don't score hat-tricks very often, but you kind of would have just assumed he'd already scored one, but it was actually the first in his career, and 120 goals for Rangers, I think it is now.
Incredible. It's, I think he is still...
Might even be 140, sorry to cut across you. It was one of those two nice round numbers, but...
It feels like he's for all the good stuff he's done Rangers, still quite a divisive figure in terms of what his legacy will be. In fact, if he retires, how do you think that Tavernier would be remembered in, say, like 5-10 years' time at Rangers?
I think time will be kind to him, to be honest.
I think that as well.
At the moment, he is too associated with like Rangers. Basically, okay, they've won all the trophies when he's been there. They have won a League Cup. They have won a Scottish Cup. They have won a title, but it's one of each of them. And from that point of view, just to say, sorry, 143 goals. So God knows where I was bringing that up from. Anyway, still a good tally, but completely wrong to say it was a round number because it's not. But the fact that he's probably or potentially going to get to 150 goals for Rangers as a fullback, even if more than half of them are penalties, it's still an impressive record. And I think, the fact that he has probably been a guy that's led them through some tough patches, and I don't think, as much as some people like it to be, I don't think at any of the points where they've been a crisis club during that period, it's been because of James Tavernier. Mm-hmm. It's been because of some of the other players that have been round about and some of the people that have been in the dugout and all the rest of it. And I think, probably in 10, 15 years' time, you'll be looked back on very fondly, because he's had big moments. I think he scored, if I remember correctly, he scored in the game against Leipzig at Ibrox. Mm-hmm. He scored, he's had really big moments in Europe. He's had big moments against Celtic. So there have been things to cling on to. For him, even though, as I think we've discussed before, I suspect no Rangers player in history has probably lost more games than James Tavernier as well. But it's also because he's been there a long time and it's been a less good Rangers team.
You need to dig out the data for that one. Before we come on to Queen's Park, just two players that scored there. Ryan Naderi making his debut for the club. He joined from Hansa Rostock. He is the most expensive signing from the third tier of German football. Big strapping guy, took his goals very well. And Tochi Chukwueze, got his first goal for the club. What do you make of their impact, or can you read anything at all from about Rangers players' performances against such limited opposition?
I think it's hard to kind of want to read too much into it, because I think you're just looking at the quality of the opposition. But they have been they beat Kelly on 5-1 on Wednesday night. But again, it was like, oh well, you can write that off a wee bit because we were down to 10 men after 3 minutes. But regardless of that, there have been plenty of Rangers teams who have not done these things. And I think you just have to kind of say, well, and I think at the time we looked at the business and it's a gamble on the Derry because of the level he's coming from. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, at least he's very well used to playing in front of big crowds. And, it's not like, when you're playing the German third tier, it's not like you're coming out of a league where, it's 2 men and a dog. There's still big crowds, big teams, the fact it's, as I said, when we were talking about it, Hansa Rostock, if you told me they were in Bundesliga, I'd be like, yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like, it's not quite the same as signing them from, FC Schweiderling, who've, never been at the high level. And Chukwueze and Romans as well, who...
He's getting a bit of a pop, actually, Romans, isn't he? I think the fans have really taken to him very quickly.
They've been needing a full-back, like a left-back for a long time, and it maybe kind of got one. Probably they've not really had a good option there since Borna Barisic. I was going to say since he left, but probably since about halfway through Borna Barisic's Rangers career. So we'll find out if the players that they've signed have been good enough or not, but they've identified parts of the team that have needed improving and they've tried to improve them, and they've brought in guys that have they could be good. Mm-hmm. And I think we're about to hit a bit of pressure for Rangers. It's the first time that I would say they're probably marginal favourites for the league now, just because of that, the Hearts defeat in midweek and all the rest of it. But it'll be interesting to see how they handle, a wee trickier run of fixtures that will come up, the pressure of, post-split, because obviously Rangers have won the league recently, but Celtic are the ones who have all the experience of that aspect of things. So, but I do think these guys will be they look like the much better team under role, even if they have sometimes been unconvincing. Not in this game. It's worth mentioning, just on Queen's Park getting scudded. 8-0 like that. Kelly played Queen's Park in the Scottish Cup just before COVID, and we beat them 6-0 at Rugby Park. And I think Chris Burke assisted all 6 goals, and I think they were all from corners as well. So it's I don't think there'll be a single player that played in both games, but it's maybe like in the DNA of Queen's Park Football Club. It's like they're two they're the gentlemen. They're two set pieces or don't count. The Corinthian values.
I think this might be the poorest performance we've seen from any team this season. I thought that, having gone to see East Kilbride lose 6-0 against the Spartans a couple of weeks ago, I thought that was the worst performance I've seen from a team this season. I actually think it's Queen's Park here, and that's even accounting for the disparity in quality between the sides. I thought Queen's Park were dreadful here. I think that there's no shame in losing at Ibrox. There's no shame at losing to Premiership opposition. But Queen's Park, just to lose so many goals from corners, they just lacked aggression, they lacked structure. They looked towards the end like no one wanted to be there. Now I can understand that, but if you're a professional footballer, at least give me something. At least give me something to cling on to. I thought Callum Ferry looked really poor in this. Callum Ferry, if you just remember 12 months ago, probably his biggest contribution as a Queen's Park player was saving the penalty from James Tavernier that ultimately won Queen's Park progression into the quarterfinals of the Scottish Cup. And in terms of, if you're going to take your revenge on someone, then this is the way to do it. Absolutely big dogging them, just reminding them that we're the big team in Glasgow. You're not, and we're absolutely going to destroy you. And I think that I worry for Queen's Park after that. I went to see them on the Tuesday night, but prior to this match against Ross County, finished 1-0 to County. Chick Paisley scored with 10 minutes to go. And it was a strange game where Queen's Park, I thought, were the better of the two sides in the first half. Then as the game went on, I don't know what Sean Crichton was thinking with some of his changes, but I think he might have had one eye on this game against Rangers. And he was taking players off at various stages of the second half, and it actively made them weaker, taking off guys like Aidan Connolly and Henry Fieldson. And ultimately, County were able to capitalise on that and win. So not only have you lost a game that you maybe could have taken something from, you've been destroyed at Ibrox, which is going to have a massive demoralising effect on them. I think Crichton's got a really tough job this week to try and rouse them for that. And then on Saturday, you're away to Dingwall to play County again, and what's another 6-pointer? It's a big game for it. And I just wonder how the team's confidence is coming into this one. It was a dreadful performance from them. I can't have any. I like Queen's Park. I don't like being critical of them, and I like Sean Crichton. I've said that a number of times. Nothing positive to say about this at all.
Maybe they'll be like when Cowden Beef got beat 10-0 in the next game. I'm sure when Hearts beat them 10-0, they went and drew with Rangers. So, yeah, you never know. But just on Aidan Connolly, I do think I was surprised they didn't show the lines for the VAR decision for that offside, because it looked quite tight to me for the disallowed goal.
Mm-hmm.
He must only be about 15 yards offside. I've never seen such an offside goal in my life.
But it's interesting to see where the Spiders go from there. Now, the sixth and final fixture of the weekend took place on Sunday night, where Stennismuir took on local rivals Falkirk at Ochilview. Stenny were able to take Falkirk to extra time, but a stunner from Brad Spencer put the Bairns ahead, and then Barney Stewart capped the win with a header from a free kick. Stennismuir 0, Falkirk 2. I was obviously at the match. I'll be interested to get your thoughts. I think that you and I very rarely get the opportunity to, one, do a podcast with each other, and two, do a podcast where we talk about Stennismuir. But I'd really welcome your thoughts on this match, Craig. What did you make of it?
I mean, you get plenty of opportunities to talk about Stennismuir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, maybe I should talk about Kilmarnock then at some point.
Please don't. Please don't. But no, I think Stennismuir can be very pleased with their performance, and I think you saw a lot of what I hear you describe about the kind of strongest aspects of Gary Naismith's team, and what pulled them together. The defensive performance was exceptional. I think Nicky Jamieson was incredible in the game. His brother Darren in goals as well, as he kept being referred to, even though they are, as far as I know, completely unrelated. Had a couple of really big saves as well. Matt Aitken got put himself about. He would have been a pest to the defenders. I think maybe that was where Stennismuir just lacked a wee bit. It's his decision making wasn't the best. He the ball wasn't sticking with him that well, and that maybe changed it. I know that you talk a lot about Ross Taylor and the pace and all that. Obviously, he was missed, I felt like, in just in terms of having something, because while the defensive performance was really good, and they obviously got themselves to the point where they could have taken Falkirk to penalties, they could have maybe got themselves through. It never really felt like Stenhousemuir were going to score in the game. And that's kind of, so as soon as it went 1-0, you were like, have they got it in them? And I know that like they've shown character all season. They showed character last weekend when they were, seemingly dead and buried against Peterhead, and kind of came back and got a point. But it was the one wee thing that would maybe nag at you a wee bit is it's this kind of push and pull, right? Could they have sacrificed a wee bit of the defensive shape to try and pinch the game, or was the strategy that they took on the right one? And maybe you'll know better than me, but it felt like maybe it was a case that his hand was restricted a wee bit with unavailability of some of the key attacking players. I
think you've called absolutely spot on there, man. I think you've called it spot on. I think that what Stenhousemuir looked to do in that match was basically reprise what they did against Greenock Morton. And that was allow Morton a lot of the balls, but stay really compact, really structured. I mean, for instance, look at that right-hand side. You had Ross Meakin, who's a right-back, playing at right midfield, and Archie Graham, who's a centre-back, was playing at right-back. So it was a very, very, there was not a lot going down that right-hand side in terms of offensive. It was purely trying to limit Brosio on on Falkirk's left-hand side. But I think basically it was contain them, be structured, be disciplined, keep it tight, and then if you get the opportunity to win the ball in the transition, try and get the ball at the park, try to get free kicks, try to get corner kicks. Apparently that's a weakness of Falkirk's, as they don't defend set pieces particularly well. Try to get into positions where you can do that. But I thought it was quite straightforward for Falkirk at the back. I remember when I saw Lewis Nielsen starting, I think Lewis Nielsen, he's got all the attributes to be a good football player. I don't think he's a particularly good player, however. I thought that he was someone we could have got at. We never really got at him. We never really got at anyone, to be honest. There's a point, actually, there was a ball over the top, and I think it was Ewan O'Reilly was running onto it, and Ewan O'Reilly's one of our quicker players. But then I think it was up against Leon McCann, and Leon McCann just stormed past him, and you begin to see the difference now. I know Leon McCann's not exactly known for his pace, but that's the difference between the Premiership and League One.
You say the difference between the Premiership. Leon McCann was playing in League One 2 years ago.
Yes,
so half these players were.
He's got faster.
But they were unbeaten in it, so they were a good League One, very good League One
somehow
team.
Got faster. I think that's what we were looking to do in that game, but just Falkirk marshalled us very well. Matty Aitken didn't really get much off Nielsen and Cole Donaldson. Didn't really get much from them. So the ball just wasn't sticking. We couldn't get the support around him. We missed Ross Taylor's pace. He's not going to be back till later on in the month. And I agree with Gary Naismith's post-match interview. At 1-0, there's still a wee chance with like 5-10 minutes to go. But when Barney Stewart scored that goal, that was it. That was it. Even in fact, to be honest, even when Spencer had scored, that I think we all knew that it was very unlikely that Stenhousemuir would come back into it. Stewart just put the tin lid on it. And ultimately, but as you say, I'm hugely proud of the players' performance. I think that no failures in that team. Nicky Jamieson, I think that's his best game for the club. And weirdly, is one of his worst performances was against Peterhead the previous week. He couldn't do anything right in that game. And I think that DJ had a good game in goals. I think Ollie White was strong in the middle of the park. Zeke Cameron tried to make a difference when he came on. He gave them tried to dribble with it. But ultimately, I think it was just quite an awkward evening for Falkirk. It was a potential banana skin, but ultimately very comfortable for them at both ends of the park. It just took them a wee bit of time to actually get going.
I think it helps them because like when you're a Premiership team going into that normally, like say like Killie going into a tie like that against an like upwardly mobile League One team or a good Championship team or whatever it may be, you're playing quite a different game to you're used to, because like we are very rarely playing games where like we play games where we're against a team who we think we're better than and we try and score goals and whatever. We rarely play a team who are like set up so defensively. And again, it's not a criticism, but that's just like how Stenhousemuir wanted to play and hit on the break and all the rest. But Falkirk have got that experience of the fact that probably, even though they've not necessarily been doing that in the Premiership this season, they've had 2 years, probably more than 2 years in reality, of doing that in the lower leagues. And McGlynn as a coach is been there, seen it all. Like, so he's not going to be thrown off by it, and they'll be really happy with that. And like, they got through the tie, and I don't think, unlike St Mirren, where I think they could justifiably be disappointed with how they played, I felt like Falkirk, as much as they were frustrated, they kept doing all the right things. They kept trying to play the right way to break Stenhousemuir down, and it felt like a matter of time situation. And if had they not won the game, it would have been probably mostly bad luck and very good defending rather than anything Falkirk did wrong. And I thought, I did think bringing Barney Stewart on for Brian Graham did make a difference to them as well.
100%. I think that was maybe the probably the only thing McGlynn got wrong that on the night. Now, I appreciate that if you're playing lower league opposition in the cup, you maybe have to give some of the other boys a shot. I think because that's like it is. Because if, for instance, if you're not getting a game, if you've been out of the team for a wee bit and you're not going to get a game against Stenhousemuir, then when are you likely to get a game? So I think like bringing Graham on, in theory, it's the right thing to do. But Graham's at that stage where he's basically going to stay between the posts. He's not really going to move laterally, drag players out of position. And when you're Nicky Jamieson or Gregor Buchanan, ideal. That's the kind of players that they're most comfortable at coming up against. And you saw that particularly in Nicky Jamieson. Just was able to deal with him quite easily. The only time Graham was able to use his presence, there was a chance in the first half. I think he was able to back into someone and flick the ball off to, it might have been Marsh, I can't quite remember, but the shot was whacked over the bar. But other than that, when Stewart came on, you're thinking, right, now it's going to be a bit more challenging. And Stewart, I know he scored. I don't think he had that massive an impact in the game. I was a bit disappointed. To be honest, a wee bit disappointed with both goals in a way, because I think with Spencer's, I only appreciate it when I watch the replays that he actually has quite a bit of time in the ball to control it, look up and pick his shot, and it's a really well struck shot. Just there's, again, not a lot of backlift in it, but it's very powerful and it's very difficult for the goalkeeper to save. Could someone have come out to him and blocked him?
I think it's hard when you're 100 minutes or whatever it was into a tie and you're defending deep and you're just getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's when you do see these goals like coming from, and Spencer's like a really good player. Like he's one, he was at Kelly, his first cup in Scotland was Kelly, but he was at Kelly when Steve Clark was the manager, and we had like probably the strongest midfield in the country. So he never got a game at all. He was barely even on the bench, and then he obviously kind of drifted down to the lower leagues, but he's come back and he's been a really good player for Falkirk.
He's a very classy player. And the second goal, it was just annoying to lose a goal from a set piece, because I don't think Stewart, it's basically just a run across the face of goal. And I think that's how Stenhousemuir had been so good at basically defending Falkirk. Any balls from out wide, I think that's what Gary Naismith and the team had done very well. Playing very, very narrow, forcing Falkirk out wide. And I thought sometimes their decision making, particularly the more the game went on, I think their decision making could be quite poor with some of the balls they were putting in, the wrong balls, maybe missed kicks. Weirdly enough, the number of times, the further the game went on, the more relaxed I got. I never really felt under any massive duress. I think that's probably the frustrations for Falkirk would have been that some of the decision making could be poor when the ball was worked out wide, and that they didn't really have any massive spells of pressure in front of goal. There was some, very occasionally they would force DJ into a good save. But the point I'm making is to lose it, to having defended so well and then to lose a goal with a guy running to the front post and flicking it in, that'd be a disappointment. But I can't begrudge Falkirk the win at all. I thought that on the whole, you summed up there, it would have taken a massive slice of bad luck for them to have lost that tie, given the way it all panned out. Now we'll look at the draw, the quarter-final draw. We'll look at the games in turn. St Mirren versus Partick Thistle. How do you see that one going?
I think if it was at Firhill, you would almost make it a coin toss. I think there's still a chance for Thistle, but you kind of still look at the fact that St Mirren and Paisley, probably a big crowd in. Like, it'll be a good game. I think it'll be an enjoyable game, but I think St Mirren probably will win.
Falkirk versus the winners of Dundee United or the Spartans. Interesting tie. I'm sure that when the Spartans' very first match as an SPFL club was a League Cup tie against Dundee United and they beat them 1-0.
Yeah, that's right. we'll wait and see, because you would expect Dundee United to beat Spartans next week, but it's not a guarantee. Spartans are obviously playing well. Their away record's been pretty good in League Two, I think, this season as well. So it's not like they're kind of based on that. You'd imagine a step too far to go to a Premiership team and win, but Dundee United have had a bit of a struggle of late.
Yeah.
But if they get through, you would still put Falkirk as favourites. Like, they're at home, they're playing a team that they are above in the league. I would imagine. I can't imagine they won't still be above them in the league by the time this tie comes around.
And they beat them quite comfortably the last time they played. Was it 3-0 to Falkirk the last time they met each other?
Yeah, I was just double checking the exact scoreline there before I started talking nonsense. But yeah, it was because they played them in the opening day of the season, and that was a 2-2 draw before Falkirk. I think it took them a wee while to get into their flow. And yeah, they won 3-0 at Tannadice as well. So you would fancy Falkirk to get through it, but it's obviously again, Dundee United will not go to Falkirk thinking, oh, there's no way we can win here or anything like that. Assuming they do get through. If Falkirk are playing Spartans, they'll 100% win.
But the Spartans have got that. There's a lot of. It's not like a lot of low. I mean, I say there's not a lot of low. There are a lot of players who have played at a fairly low level. But in terms of players with like top flight experience, there's a number of them in the Spartans. Guys like Callum Booth. James Cragen played top flight football. Sean Welsh will have done.
Cragen did for Thistle. Yeah,
Cragen did for Thistle. Mark McNulty as well.
Yeah.
They're a pretty good side, the Spartans. They're quite a stuffy team, but they can really turn on when the mood takes them. Dunfermline Athletic versus the winners of Aberdeen or Motherwell. And I think I said that earlier. That was one of the big disappointments from the weekend, was that we didn't get to see that tie. Yeah. It was supposed to be televised. I think that would have been a really interesting match.
Yeah, I think this game will be maybe the most, I mean, obviously an Old Firm game is going to be interesting, but like the most interesting other game, I think, is going to be that one, Dunfermline against either of those two teams. Like, either they're playing Aberdeen, who are a big club, who are probably not at their best at the moment, although they may have a new manager in the door and all the rest of it by then, or they're playing Motherwell, who are exceptional at the moment. Like, just a very, very good team. A Motherwell team who will be like really sniffing the chance of a trophy this season. They'll feel they blew it in the League Cup and getting beat by St Mirren in the semi. They're not mathematically out of the league race, and maybe if they won all their games, I think they would win the league, but they probably are unlikely to do that, and they'll not necessarily get that. But going to Pittodrie is still hard, I would say, in the Cup. Like, Killie have had it where we've had pretty good Killie teams. Steve Clark took a team up to Pittodrie this season. We finished third. We got a draw and then lost in penalties at home. We went up there when the year we finished fourth under McInnes, and it was Neil Warnock's Aberdeen, and we still got beat. So going to Pittodrie is always... that was one where Warnock, they beat us, and then he resigned at full time.
That's right.
But that kind of thing... It's still a hard one for Motherwell to do, but if they get through that, like, I think going to East End Park, I think that's going to be just like the Dunfermline Hibs game. I thought, as much as the game itself was quite poor, the atmosphere and like East End Park's a great place for watching games, and it's Dunfermline are one of these teams, and there's quite a few of them that tend to get bigger crowds and tend to get like more excited when they're in the Championship than when they're in the top flight, because they play that same game, Dunfermline v. Maybe not so much Hibs with the geographical elements, but say Dunfermline v Motherwell in the Premiership, you'll be like, 4,000 people there.
Yeah.
And then Dunfermline v Motherwell Scottish Cup quarter final, well, Dunfermline Championship sellout. And
yeah.
But yeah, like, that'll be an interesting one. And obviously, Neil Lennon, a lot of history in the Scottish Cup. So,
of course.
I think there's a lot of narrative to go there for that one as well.
And Rangers versus Celtic.
The fact is that Ibrox, like, you really can't see past Rangers at the moment, but... Yeah, the form book goes out the window in a rivalry, Craig. and I'm talking about the form book. Like, Celtic's form is actually not that bad at all. It's just like you watch them and you're like, you're shit. But O'Neill has obviously been there and done it with them. It's like nothing's going to face him at that point. They still have good players. They still have it in them to get a result there. But it's interesting because like Celtic's, I think, run of fixtures kind of coming up.
It's really difficult, isn't it? They've got a pretty testing run ahead of them.
Ewan Taylor was being very generous when he listed it, because I think he started the run with Kilmarnock away. And I'm not sure that's apart from the pitch that they don't like playing on. I'm not sure it's the most challenging fixture at the moment. But yeah, it's Kelly away, Stuttgart at home, Hibs at home, Stuttgart away, Rangers away in the Cup, I think, Aberdeen away, and then Rangers away in the league. So they've got that run of 4 away games, which is Stuttgart, Rangers, Aberdeen, Rangers. That's going to be season defining, I think. I was really, really pleased this season of all seasons that those two did get drawn together now, because it was part of why I was pissed off with the Dundee outcome on Saturday night. Was it really feels like a year where there's actually a chance that there's not a single trophy goes to the Old Firm, because Hearts can win the league definitely, and the Scottish Cup there are other teams in there, and I kind of thought it would be nice to get one of them out early, and then you've kind of got semi-final and a final of two teams having a shot at doing the other one over. And I kind of thought when Celtic were going out, you thought, right, well, now you've got kind of plenty of opportunities for someone to beat this Rangers team. Now I think the best outcome is probably Celtic to win, because I think they're the most likely to get turned over. And then you're looking at definitely Falkirk, definitely Motherwell, but probably even some of the other teams will fancy their chances. I mean, St Mirren did it 3 months ago.
I fancy Falkirk. That's I think that's my tip. It just feels like the club are in a very good place at the moment, and I think it's the fact that they have got that little gap in 6th place between themselves and 5th. It feels like they can. No, I wouldn't say relax. I don't think John McGlynn's is daft to do that, but it feels like they can take the cup game seriously and still have a wee bit left over for the league games. I'd fancy a lot of the teams. I think that maybe not so much the Spartans, but any of the other teams in the competition could legitimately go and win it. But I've got something about Falkirk to go and win it. And that, Craig, on that scary note, actually, that's a frightening note to finish on. But that was good fun. Thank you very much for taking the time out to hang out.
It's good when I get to pretend I know things about Lower League just by looking at results and never watching games. So I'm like, oh yeah, Elgin are really struggling. I'm like, I don't fucking know. I've never seen them. I just know that they keep losing games.
Listen, Jim Spence has been doing it on the Courier podcast for years, mate. So if he can make a living from it, then so can you. There's absolutely no shame in that. And if you've enjoyed what Craig and I have got to talk about and you want to hear more from the Terrace, do remember to subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. There is hours and hours and hours and hours of content up there. Some really good stuff. I particularly enjoyed, Craig, podcast you alluded to earlier in this episode when we were talking about the transfer window, looking at some of the players that had come into Scottish clubs. That was really informative. And even although we've gone beyond the transfer window, still worth going and checking out. So for as little as £2 per month, you can get it. So do get on that just now. We will be back later on in the week. Myself and Sean McGuigan are teaming up for a Lower League podcast, which will be very exciting. I am going on Tuesday night to Clyde versus Elgin City. I bought my ticket, looked at other fixtures and realised Hearts versus Hibs was on the television. Feel like a right idiot now, but I paid my 17 quid. I have to go to Hamilton for that. So if you want to hear about that, do tune in. But until then, I will be back with Sean. But Craig, pleasure speaking to you.
Yeah, likewise.
And a pleasure to hang out with you, the listener, and enjoy your football. But I don't have anything written down for this. I normally have something for who was badly behaved at the weekend.
Did anyone get sent off?
Unlike Mikko Virtanen sliding in for the worst penalty of all time. Enjoy your football, but please do so respectfully. Thank you.